Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise and speak on behalf of this resolution. And I think I'd like to start this morning by remembering that since her birth on July 4th, 1776, the United States has stood as a beacon of freedom and hope to all of those oppressed all over the world. We are a unique and one-of-a-kind country, founded not on race or ethnicity, but rather an ideal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In its simplest form, Mr. Speaker, the American way means that when given freedom and opportunity, anyone willing to work hard can succeed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, merit is based on achievement, not the color of our skin. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we have failed to meet this ideal many times. The United States has made some big mistakes, and we have suffered for those mistakes. Within the history books of our nation, the dark chapters are written on the pain of those errors. Executive Order 9066, issued by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, just 4 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, was one of those mistakes. Mr. Speaker, it is rightfully called one of the worst violations of constitutional rights in American history. 120,000 Japanese American citizens were imprisoned. They were uprooted, their homes were sold or abandoned, their community leaders were arrested, Mr. Speaker. Students' education was disrupted, and most importantly of all, Mr. Speaker, their freedom was revoked. Many people lost everything, and I think it's important that we recognize the pains we faced in our own home state. In Seattle and nearby Bainbridge Island, there was a thriving Japanese American community. Japanese Americans in the Puget Sound were some of the first to be evacuated. Many were taken to Camp Harmony, a makeshift camp on the Puyallup Fairgrounds, housing nearly 8,000 people. Now from there, some of those folks were sent to Idaho or one of 10 other inland camps housing people from the West Coast. Mr. Speaker, I believe these inmates coped as best they could, sharing housing and bathing facilities. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, they shared the shame of losing lifelong homes, neighborhoods, friends, and family. And Mr. Speaker, as we look back on the forced relocation of those Japanese American citizens, it is astounding for me to think about the magnitude of their suffering. But even more astounding when we think about the fact that over half of those individuals were children. As we reflect on those events, we must also reflect on the strength and the dignity of those that endured them. In 1988, when President Ronald Reagan signed the bill providing restitution for the wartime internment of our Japanese American citizens, he said, Mr. Speaker, that this cannot erase the past. And in fact, he said, this bill is not even about property. It is about honor. And Mr. Speaker, as members of this body who sit here today, we know that honor is an ideal. And for me, Mr. Speaker, honor means if I make a mistake, I own it. And if we have courage, we learn from it. As a state, we are here today to remember our nation's self-inflicted wounds. But I think we are also here today to reaffirm who we are as a people. We choose to learn from the mistakes of our past. Even more importantly today, Mr. Speaker, we remain committed to the ideals we were built upon: freedom and liberty for all. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, I would just say, I don't believe the American way has changed. It is an ideal worth attaining, and we must never waver in our commitment to fully realizing it. And I would submit to you, Mr. Speaker, if we do that, a better tomorrow is always possible in America. I urge your support. Thank you.